G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute. Today I'm joined by Osiris Frost. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How's it going?
It's a little hot here, down under. I know you guys are freezing your nuts up there in the up over, but it's all good.
Just coming out of winter here. Today's pretty nice day out, actually.
We're just heading into it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sick of this heat. It's just like it's just in time, but yeah. Kicking us off today, I am going to talk about hashtag Jaden again. He fortunately passed away, and his friend would like to give his ship away in honor of his friend. And so he also likes the Inforunners, so collabing a little bit with him to give his ship away as a giveaway. So if you're interested in winning F7A upgrade along with a Super Hornet, leave hashtag Jaden and be subscribed in the comments. Okay, also, yesterday, Starjump, Grim and Ender released a little sneak peek trailer of a Retaliator with my logo on it, and I am very humbled by that. I've been helping them out with a little bit of a project that they've got coming out at Invictus, and it will not just be me that you will see on the ship. There will be many other people of note. I'll leave it at that.
That was an incredible little teaser. I feel bad for that vulture. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out.
That wasn't my fault. I didn't do that. It was honest. I was not to blame. But you've also probably seen one of our grid floating around. You'll see one of some other people coming as well, and not just us, but many, many, many others of the Star Citizen community. I've been contacting many a content creator, so I look forward to that video coming in the next couple of weeks or month or so around Invictus. But yeah. All right, I just thought I'd highlight that because I've had a lot of messages, and I just wanted to say thank you to those boys. All right, so today's episode itself is going to be we're going to start off with a bit of a tier list and a little bit of an explanation, and then we're going to move on to actually talking about which ones we think are the best daily drivers and go into a bit of a deep dive down the road. So I think we probably should start, Osiris, with what we defined as what we saw the daily drivers as. Yeah. And it is a complicated one. It's not just a very clear cut.
It's a bit nebulous of a term, and everybody's got their own 2 cents, right? Yeah. But I think my take on it has been
go ahead.
Sort of what a daily driver I see as a ship that the primary strength of the ship is its versatility.
Yeah. And I would almost go a little step further and say it's the most versatile of the versatile. And what do I mean by that is if you take a small ship, it can scale up to do some of the things a medium ship can do, and a large ship can scale down to do some of the a medium ship can do, but a medium can go up and down. So for me, most of the daily driver ships are medium base ships. They're in that medium, maybe a few in the large bracket, and that's about it. And so for me, a lot of the smalls and the capitals completely disappear. The capitals more so because they struggle with going through the jump points. They struggle landing on certain structures or having to takes them long down to get to planet, and they're slower and stuff like that. So I'm just giving that as a broad overview. We do have some honorable mentions today, but when we go through all these ships, we will criticize why some made it in and others didn't. And there are ones that literally just dragged over the line, and there are ones that we're just like, we have to cut that because it doesn't quite make it. But we will go through as much as we can. And I have no doubt in the comments there are people going to go, why isn't this ship on this list? And I'm trying to cover...
I'm not going to get too sentimental about any of these spaceships. No mercy.
All right. All right, so I think we'll start with the honorable mentions and go up. How does that sound for you? So I'll let you pick one from the list. Because the honorable mentions we agreed on, it's one of the ones we did agree on. So you pick one and we'll go from there.
Well, let's start at the very bottom of accessibility, and we'll go with the 315P.
Right.
This ship is on the list because it's pretty versatile for its class. It has the tractor beam out of the box, and you can substitute that because it's a utility hardpoint. It could be whatever else that ends up being. It also has additional cargo capacity beyond the other ships in its range, and it's like double the 300i, I think. And lastly, it has, according to its ship description, it has the custom sensor suite by Chimeric Communications. So without having to pre-load out the ship in your hangar, you can go out into the verse in any direction, and you can do whatever, any of 3 different things at the spur of the moment without prior coordination.
Yeah. and probably the reason it drops back down the list, though, and it's dropped in honorable mentions, is it doesn't have the versatility in crew size. It can only, because it's a smaller ship, it can only accommodate one. But if you are looking for a daily driver for one person, then it is a very good one. But yeah, again, it drops down the list purely based on it. You can't have a bigger crew size of, say, 4 people. All right. For me, this is the one that just crossed the line, and this was brought up by one of our supporters in the chat before the show. Shout out to Starlet. She brought up the Valkyrie. And the Valkyrie technically does slip in as a daily driver because it can do multiple things. It can carry vehicle, it can carry cargo, it does the smaller to larger crew size. You could technically get away with just the one person, though you'd have to limit yourself to the safer space areas to do so. But for me, they're all kind of just versions of cargo. So to me, it doesn't quite get into the like if it had it does have a little bit of cargo combat punch to it as well, but it's more kind of restricted to on planet, and I think for me that's why it doesn't quite make the tier list. Is that similar reasons for you, Osiris?
Yeah, I'd agree with that broadly. It's very contextual. Like, I don't think it can effectively be a cargo ship while it's loaded with a vehicle. And just to piggyback on your description there, I mean, I'm a kind of a hardliner when it comes to the solo ability of ships. I don't believe that a ship can be effectively soloed if it has a crew of more than one. And I know that I don't want to go off the topic of the episode, but I know that a lot of people are expecting different things out of AI blades or NPCs or whatever. But I think that you need to have a human crew in all the key spots. And I'll just leave it at that.
If you're interested in that type of thing, we do have 2 episodes, and we'll probably do another one soon called Solo or Fleet, and we've actually done those in the past, and I think it's about 2 years ago since we did one, so we might do another one soon. All right, the next one for you, Osiris.
The next one for the honorable mentions would be the Cutlass series, and these are very commonly thought of as the jack of all trades ships, but the reason that we have them as honorable mentions is because out of the box they don't offer a versatility of gameplay in the way that some of the stronger offerings here on our list will. So you could have a Cutlass Black and you can do combat, you can also do cargo or carrier some sort of a ship or excuse me, a vehicle. But if you have a vehicle in the hangar bay, your cargo capacity is very strongly cut down. And also we're kind of evaluating this on the number of crew that you can have in the ship. And I think the Cutlass only has 3 crew slots. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's probably what makes that one come down a bit. The red and the blue, they kind of do become a bit more flexible and a bit more like a daily driver, but then they give up so much cargo space that they lose that flexibility. And not being able to, if you could pull the equipment out of the red and have just cargo, or pull the equipment out of the blue, they, to me, would quite often honestly slip into the daily driver category, but they're just a little bit too rigid, unfortunately, and they're not quite versatile enough for me. But yes, I do think some people would be able to get away with them as a good daily driver, much like the 315p, if you want less crew. But for me, a daily driver is a very flexible, versatile ship, and they don't quite meet that requirements because their crew requirements are just too low, or they can't support enough. Also, they can't support things for longer hauls. They're kind of restricted to a solar system, so because they don't have the food and things like that. All right, the next one for me, I guess because you covered that, the Cutlass, so probably no surprise, I'll do the next one up, which would be the Freelancer. And for me, one that would possibly fall into that would be the variant of the DER. The DER is probably the most of these honorable mentions on this list. You correct me if you think I'm wrong. That is most like a daily driver, and for the same
because
thing,
it has the native exploration capacity. It doesn't have to be specially outfitted for it, and that gives it something else that the other ships that we've been talking about doesn't have.
Yeah, and it actually gains a lot of functionality. Like, it can go much further because of the fuel, extra fuel and stuff like that, and it can still hold 4 people and stuff like that. But again, it is a little bit smaller, and it might be a little bit slower in the warp and stuff like that. So some of this stuff is a little bit on speculation at the moment because we haven't fully flushed it out and seen what these variants can do in the end game. But we're just going on what specs and stuff there are at the moment. All right, I think we're down to the last one. So you get lucky last.
Wasn't that all of the honorable mentions?
Nope. I'll do the last one then because you've forgotten. It's the 600i Touring.
Ah, yes, I did forget that.
Yeah. And mainly because the 600i expiration is right at the very bottom, and this is a lot worse than that. So it basically drops off the list into honorable mentions territory. You're basically giving up all the benefits of the expiration variant, like the rover and stuff like that, just to get couches and stuff, which is absolutely useless in my book. But you correct me if you think I'm wrong there, Osiris.
No, I agree with you.
All right, so do you want to do... How many have you got in your bottom section, so to speak, in your bottom tier? I've lost your audio.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, you're back.
So
cool.
I have a different bottom section than you do.
Yep.
So I think that where we largely agreed was the honorable mentions, but I think that we're going to have kind of a different...
Yep, and that's why I was asking how many you had.
So I have 3.
Me too. So you do yours first, one of yours first, and then I'll do one of mine. I was just trying to make sure it was even, so go ahead.
Yep. Okay, so the first one I have in my bottom tier list is the Corsair. And I have this because you have combat, obviously, with the Corsair. It has some exploration, but then your third thing would be the cargo, right? But you can only do the cargo or a rover. You can't do both at the same time. And secondly, its exploration is going to be a little bit less than the other exploration ships, and its combat is also I don't know. This ship has kind of lost the shine for me a little bit because it's got all that fixed forward-facing weaponry, and I just don't see that being as effective with the direction that they seem to be moving combat in as turrets or gimbaled gameplay. So that's why it's on my bottom tier.
I'll leave my comments until when I talk about it. So my first one in my bottom list is the Connie Taurus. It is the worst variant, in my opinion, of the daily drivers. I still think it is a very good daily driver, but it really is limited in its scope because it is purely a cargo hauler. That said, it does carry a lot more cargo than the other variants. I still think you could technically kind of solo it because the driver can use the guns, which is not all ships can do that. And I also think you lose the ability for the Merlin, where the other variants don't do that, and that's kind of where the thing that kind of keeps the Connies as they are in that daily driver set is because they have another ship, like having another vehicle that can park in them. Isn't it a very unique thing to be able to have another ship at this size range that can park inside you, in your own ship? It's a very unique thing that the Connie has.
It is a unique functionality. I personally have a difficult time recognizing the...
Talk about it when you do the Taurus. I think it'll be better. So talk about it when you do it. Your next one, Osiris.
Well, actually, my next one was the Constellation variants. I think several of the variants I lumped in together in this bottom tier. And
go for it.
The thing I was going to say about the snub is I have a hard time differentiating the snub as different than combat, and that was one of the roles that I had for the Constellation. So it's to me the snub is just basically like a turret that can detach from the ship.
I can see where you're going with that. So for me though, it's like,
it's
how you
different
can
than like the Pisces is for the Carrick, which you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say the Carrick is a much higher upgrade than that. But like when you can put a vehicle inside a ship, there are not many ships that can have a ship inside a ship. It's even rarer.
Sure.
And you must admit, as low as ships go, I think there's no other ship that can have a ship in it at that level. And I think the next highest one up is the Carrick. So there's quite a big jump to go from a Constellation to a Carrick to be able to have a ship inside. So that could, like, in worst case scenario, if you're the last guy left on the ship and you've got to get out, like, there's your escape. You possibly get out of it on an escape pod, and stuff like that. So there is some big advantages to that ship, but I think they're very much to be determined down the road. With the next patch, though, we're getting docking for it. So I've been waiting for docking for that Merlin for a very, very, very long time. It would be almost 8 years at this point. So
yeah.
All right,
Constellation. I mean, it's not. It's coming around.
Yeah. Have you got any more, or that's your take on all the Constellation variants as a whole?
For the most part, with I have the Aquila as on a higher tier because it has exploration, but we can get to that when we get to that.
Yeah, cool. All right, so my next one in my bottom list is the Starfarer. The Starfarer for me is basically the reason it's probably in the bottom tier is it's so big and it's so slow. But if you've ever seen the video and Algrid and I did on the Starfarer, it is a lot of support roles. Like, it's got 8 drop seats. You can fit multiple vehicles in there, a crap ton of cargo, and it's got a unique role in the fact that it can refine gas and collect gas. That's a pretty big set, right? But the real big detractor for it is its speed. It is exceptionally slow. And I would say that is the reason, if they could pick up the speed on it, it would basically definitely bring it up the tier level. It to me, it's what really brings it down. It's speed.
Yep.
Your take on
that? I agree with you. I think it has the gameplay flexibility, but and I put it in my medium tier for that reason because in an objective sense, you can do multiple different types of gameplay without having to go back and refit the ship. But it is. God, it's just not a good internal layout. It's very slow. It's not user friendly.
Yeah, but that said, a lot of the internal layout that is bad is often in an area that you don't walk through. You tend to walk through that bottom section a lot more than you do the top. And once you're up in the areas where you are, you don't tend to move a lot.
Darkwinter pointed out in the chat that you can technically fit a Merlin inside the bay or inside the cargo hold of a Freelancer Max.
There you go. So there's 2 ships.
Yeah,
can do
okay.
It. But you get my
I don't
point.
know how much cargo you're going to fit in there at that point, but...
yeah, not too many. All right. So your next one, I think, this is your last one for the bottom tier, yeah?
Well, I kind of cheated and I lumped in the Constellation variants together. So I had the Corsair, I had the Phoenix, Taurus, Andromeda, all kind of bottom tier.
All right, you cheater. All right, so my last one, as I kind of alluded to before, is the 600i exploration variant. The 600i for me is just, again, it falls into that a little bit too big category and doesn't do enough, which is my main problem with Origin as a whole. They just don't do enough. I do think it's a very combat-savvy ship. I think what it does do well. It's like an Apple Macintosh, like an Apple Mac. They do extremely, extremely well. They just don't do enough. Right, and that's the problem.
Apple is a good way to compare Origin in that the fans are very cultish. They're paying way too much for what the product is worth.
Yep.
And it looks really pretty. So yeah, Origin is the Apple of Star Citizen. It's a good comparison.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. So let's move on to the mid tier then. I've got 5 in the mid tier. What do you got?
I have 4.
All right, so I'll go first then because I got 5. So, actually, you go first because 3 of mine are kind of like what yours was in the last one. So, you go first.
Okay. So, I had the 600i exploration in the mid tier, and the reason I put it there and not in the bottom tier is because it technically does have 3, out of the box, it has 3 gameplay loops that you can do. You can do cargo, you can do exploration, and it's actually a very competent combat ship. And you can do all 3 of those things without having to specially configure it.
Technically, there's a 4th because you got the VIP gameplay type stuff you can do.
Okay, technically there's a 4th, yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's sort of a subjective thing. You had it in the bottom tier. I have it at the very bottom of the medium tier. I think to me, it's like 1 in 1A.
If I make it clear, though, I had it at the top of the bottom tier, so... Okay, so we're in similar...
So we're next door neighbors here.
Yeah, next door neighbors, so we're in the ballpark. All right, so my first one that's probably going to surprise you a little bit is, I'll do something different. So my medium one is my first medium one is the Corsair. And the reason I put the Corsair here instead of say up like the top or whatever, is for everything that Osiris alluded to, but also it puts a lot of it's got some design flaws, kind of like what's wrong with the Starfarer, where Osiris mentioned the bad layout and stuff like that, where a lot of the guns and stuff are all along that one wing. So that one wing is like a primary target to be removed, and it just literally, I think it was 60% of the guns just totally disappeared.
And they're almost all forward facing, like, so if CIG wants to go for this like close in sort of, right, it's like the Chris Roberts gif doing this with his hands. If you get out of the firing arc of those forward facing weapons, it's going to probably be pretty easy to stay out of the firing arc, considering this is going to be a less maneuverable ship than the Constellation.
And the guns that are left over, some of them are on those turrets, and those turrets are sidewards facing, and
they're so useless.
You never ever see ships fly parallel and just shoot each other in this game, or any space game for that matter.
Yeah.
So they're very useless. Go ahead.
They want you to be broadsiding, right, with those turrets. Yeah. And anything that's big and slow enough for you to broadside, the shields are not going to get penetrated by the guns that small. So they need to take those two turrets, combine them into one top turret, and make the guns bigger. Then you're talking. Now that's a ship I might look at.
The only use I've ever heard anyone give to me as a good excuse for them is kind of like on the I think it's called the A10 or whatever, that really big gunship that circles and shoots down at things. Yeah. They said, you could use it to shoot at ground vehicles or a base. And I said, but you'd be flying so slowly that they could shoot back. So I just don't. They're really bad placement. You and I talked before the show, like you said, a big one on top, or even moving one of them to the back, so it's got a back defense, a better covering. And I know they wanted to have cheaper Drake turrets that you can kind of just stand in, and that would work on the back door. And have it so it's got some kind of thing that goes across it that you can drive across the top of it. But I digress. So your next middle one, please, Osiris.
My next middle one is the Mercury Star Runner, and people might be a little surprised that I've ranked it so low, but it's basically you get. I would say it's not a super competent combat ship. It's better than the concept was, since they bumped up the guns on the turrets. But you're limited to two types of gameplay here. You can do cargo, and you can do the data running. And if you put a vehicle in the back, then you're cutting into your cargo capacity. So really where we're at is you don't have the versatility that we're judging all these other daily drivers as.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd say to kind of counter that a bit is I actually think having the option to go cargo or a vehicle isn't a bad thing. At least you've got an option to do so. Some don't have that option.
But if you're away from your hangar and you do or you don't have the vehicle, now you're out in space and you don't have the vehicle. You can't switch. You can't use it if you didn't bring it, and you can't ditch it or you can ditch it, but then you ditched it. Yeah. If you want to load up on cargo, it kind of limits your versatility.
Yeah. So my next one that I and ahed about quite a bit was these three Constellation variants. So I've got the, as you call it, the Aquila, or the rest of the world calls it the Aquila, the Andromeda, or the Phoenix.
Fake news.
Fake news. The Connie it definitely needs a bit of help. As I said, the Merlin is another form of combat, so it is still in that combat role, as you alluded to yourself before, Osiris. It does take a vehicle. It does have up to 4 people that can use it quite regularly. It's got a lot of space in it. You can have a vehicle as well. So for me, a vehicle and a spaceship inside it are 2 separate things. So for me, it gives it 4 things essentially. And I think the only reason I don't have it in the top tier for, say, the Andromeda and the Aquila is basically because 2 of them are very similar. And that's why it drops down. And the Phoenix itself wouldn't be in the top tier because I just think it's in a really bad spot, and I don't like VIP gameplay, and it costs way too much for what it is. You could almost get like it's 100. Back in the day, it was $125 difference, and considering at the time that the ship itself was $225, that's half another ship of itself, and I just can't justify that for what you get. Your next middle one, sir.
Okay, so I guess we touched on the Starfarer already. We don't have to rehash that.
You
The 600i.
you can give me your thoughts on that if you want, but it's up to you.
I mean, I kind of said what
Okay.
my thoughts on it are. That technically it does have the different gameplay versatility out of the box, but it's not very user friendly, and that's why I didn't rank it higher than it is. It's to me, as soon as they come along with a medium to large refueling ship that's a more modern design, I think the Starfarer is really going to show its age.
Agreed.
So,
do you need more medium ones, or are you done?
I do have one more medium one, but I know you have it ranked higher. So for me,
what is
I
it?
put the Retaliator in the medium tier.
I've still got one more left, by the way, which I'm pretty sure you put. Yeah.
Let's revisit the Retaliator when we do it.
So my last one
You're
for the
a bigger fan than I am.
Well, I'll say what my last medium one is, but then we'll talk about it in the top tier then. So my last one in the medium bracket, and it's probably going to annoy a few people, is the Carrick. And the only thing I'll say is the reason I put it in medium is because it probably requires more crew than it should. And it's a fairly large ship. It's getting to that point where it can still connect to a space station, but it can only land on the large pads, and that starts to limit the jump points it can go through and stuff like that. So it's just those two little things. And realistically, the way the Carrick is designed is it is a really independent ship. It is not meant to be in normal space, so to speak. It's meant to be out on the fringes exploring the black. It's not meant to be designed to be in the main lanes of society. It's meant to be out on the fringes, and I'll leave it at that. Your first top pick, and I've been going from bottom to top the whole way, and I think you've been doing the same. So give me your bottom one in the top tier first, please.
Well, let's my bottom one in the top tier is the Constellation Aquila.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Aquila, as Execute says I pronounce it. I think it stands out from the rest of the Constellation line because it has everything that those have, but it also has that built-in scanning turret. And so you have native exploration gameplay. And obviously that doesn't do anything for you today, but in the future, they're going to have that gameplay fleshed out, and that will be something that you can just do with that ship that you don't need to specially prepare for.
Yeah, you are giving up a little. It's almost like going between a freelancer and a freelancer d'oeuvre, where you're kind of giving up a bit of the combat to get more of the exploration, because you're losing that turret from the Andromeda and getting the scanning suite instead. So you do have to pick and choose your battles. But I would say specifically as a daily driver, especially for an exploration, that would be the kind of one to lean for as well. My first one in the top tier is the MSR. For all the reasons you mentioned before, but I think it's kind of smaller, a little bit more nimble than, say, something like a Constellation, and that's why it's in the top and the Constellation is not. They are very similar in a lot of regards. Where the Constellation kind of goes more into a couple of like a bit into the vehicles, the spaceship, and the combat, this varies it up a little bit and goes into the data running, which I think it makes it just a little bit more versatile. And that's for me why it separates itself from the Constellation series. Kind of like how your Aquila separates itself from the Constellation series. It's the same reason why I put it in the top list. But yeah, anything else you don't add anything to that? On to the next one.
No.
Yep, go for it. What's your next one?
My next one is the Carrick, and I had that in the top tier because what I like about the Carrick, what differentiates the Carrick and the very few ships that are like it from other things is that it has dedicated vehicle and snub storage that does not eat into its cargo capacity. And so you have the front garage there, and you can load in a rover, or you can load in a rock, or whatever future gameplay profession vehicles they come out with, and you can still load it up 100% of its cargo capacity. Plus it has the exploration, and plus it has the snub. The Pisces comes natively with it, but I think it can fit some other small solo ships as well, but you can do that.
I agree with everything you've said.
About.
It's just for me that it's just slightly too big. And I think that's that's just such a big thing in this game, because you can't go through those smaller jump points, and so you're gonna have to go around a lot, and so daily drivers, to me, they're gonna have to be able to go through smaller jump points so they can they can just go anywhere fairly quickly. And I just think the MSR is just a little bit pushed out of that. Not the MSR, sorry, the Carrick is pushed out of that because there's things like the MSR and stuff like that that will be able to do that, the Constellation and stuff like that. So I like the modularity and the things that this can do. Like if they had a Carrick that was the same size as say an MSR or a Phoenix or something like that, it'd be the most popular ship in the game. Without a shadow of a doubt. And I would say there are some things that this ship does share in common with the Constellation, kind of like the Merlin's a little bit like the Pisces. But yeah, you notice as soon as you look at the Constellation, there's a lot of compensate. What's the word I'm looking for? Compensation or things that have been given up to basically get the Constellation compromised. That's the exact word I was looking for. The Carrick doesn't make any of those compromises, but because of that, it's had to grow in size, and it's got some other benefits though, like repairs, drones, medical bay. Like none of that can be underestimated. But as I said, that ship is clearly not designed to act in normal space. It's designed to be out and on its own, and that's why it's not as combat focused as others. But it does have a lot more defenses, as in shields and stuff like that. Because generalistically, you're trying to run from combat. You don't want to be in it. All right. My second top one, and as you alluded to before, is in fact the Retaliator. I think I'm just going to give you a heads up. This is probably going to be another ship scrutiny one coming up real soon. Algren and I both really, really like this ship. Paul really, really likes this ship. It is probably the most unsung smuggling ship in the game. Like, if you like the MSR for smuggling, you brought the wrong ship. You really should have brought this, and I might leave a lot of what I'm going to talk about specifically in smuggling to that episode, and we'll probably do that real soon. But again, because it's got those modules and it's got 2 rooms that you can do those modules with, it just gives it's also got the combat down pat. You start to ask questions like, I'm 25 Ks away from that Retaliator, but do I risk finding out if it's got torpedoes, or is it just carrying cargo? And so you can see straight away, there's some really good versatility in there. The ship automatically has all those good turrets on it. A drawback for that ship is the fact that you need a couple of people to man the turrets, and also that the pilot can only use the torpedoes if they're equipped. But it does just has that flexibility with the modules, and for me that just makes it really, really good. Oh, it's also got stealth, so it can kind of hide a bit more than some other ships. And stay away from it.
The only reason I didn't rank the Retaliator higher is because its versatility, which is for all the reasons you just existed. It's a very versatile ship, but that versatility is based on fitting it out with certain modules in the hangar, and then you go out into space. You can't necessarily switch roles on the fly. Not that that's a huge deal breaker, because you can still configure it with its 2 bays to be a very versatile ship. But to me, that's a little bit less flexible than for a ship like, for example, some of the other ones that we mentioned.
Kind of comes back to me a similar argument where you were saying where you have to choose between cargo or a vehicle, but some ships can't even do that. So I'd rather have a ship that can choose than not choose at all. And there are very few ships on the list that have modules, and I've probably given away my last one.
I will admit to heavily weighting a ship that doesn't have to compromise in this tier list.
Now I've actually noticed that there is a ship very specifically, because we're down to the last 2, right? And I think we've both picked the top one is our number one. I think we've got the same ship, because I've just realized it hasn't been mentioned. So what is your top one?
My top one is the Caterpillar.
Mine too, for very similar reasons to what we just mentioned. But go ahead and you tell me what you like about the Caterpillar.
The Caterpillar natively, it's a competent fighter, not a fighter like a dogfighter, but competent combat. It has cargo right out of the box. It has computer server racks right out of the box. So I think that this is going to eat into the MSR gameplay in a large capacity. It's not exactly clear whether or not it can acquire data without a data acquisition, like a satellite dish module. Maybe it can, maybe it can't. But it also has 4 customizable modular bays, and you can really outfit this thing for a broad gameplay applicability. so that you can go out for long periods of time. You don't have to go back and refit it, and you can do like a lot of everything.
I'm going to link a card up here right about now and point to last week's episode that me and Agra did on ship scrutiny for the Caterpillar, for everything we mentioned in that episode. This ship has some modules. We haven't had them confirmed, but all the ones they talked about in Explore just make this ship into like 3 different things that you could possibly use it for. And it just that versatility alone. And yes, there are some other ships that can do a very similar job to this, but the versatility just makes this more of a daily driver than, say, something like a Hercules, which really is just a cargo ship. And cargo with transport, yes, I get that, but cargo with cargo. But this can do that. It can't quite do what it does, but it just does all this other stuff, like a salvage ship, a shop, the medical gameplay, a boarding ship, like the versatility of this just far exceeds anything else. Especially in the game, and especially for medium ships, because those medium ships are going to be the daily drivers, because like I mentioned, they're able to scale up and down with the number of people. I can't talk enough about this ship. We'll go back to the Retaliator for just a second. The one advantage that ship has is you can get the base for half the price that you can get the Caterpillar for. It's $150 versus $295 for the Caterpillar. So if you are short on change, you definitely consider the Retaliator before the Caterpillar. And I would also go ahead, and I'm pretty sure besides the Carrick and the Phoenix, I think this is the most expensive ship. I'm pretty sure it is, the Caterpillar. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered everything. I think that these are great ships to consider if you are somebody who's more sane than many of us, and you haven't gone off the deep end and bought all the ships. If you bought a game package and like one ship, or you have 1 or 2 ships and that's it, then you're going to get a lot of mileage out of a daily driver, versus specialized ships like a Reclaimer or a Crucible.
That's kind of a standing Inforunners recommendation. We tend to go, just get, the base pledge or a starter ship. If you really want to go a step further, go to the Avenger. If you really want to get one ship you really like, I'd say 9 times out of 10, unless you're really into, say, something really niche, like, say, mining or something, you want to go for one of those versatile daily drivers. And I would say, you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, Osiris, the ones that we've kind of mentioned in the top and medium are probably pretty safe for most people, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Caterpillar, Retaliator, these are going to be strong choices that are going to offer you access to a lot of gameplay without having to purchase different ships.
And
it'll
of course,
give you a taste.
I think, of course, like, if you're into a certain profession and so for example, let's just take the Mercury Star Runner. If you're really into the data running, then that's the daily driver for you. Like, it's a no-brainer. So look at what the ship offers, and if you are after a daily driver, then get one that bends towards something that you would use it for. So if you are more combat, more stealth, the Retaliator, etc., etc. And I know you guys are not idiots, and I'm sure you can figure that out. But if you do need help, hit us up on the Discord. Again, I think I'll sign us off with the hashtag Jaden. Subscribe if you want a chance to win an F7A and a Super Hornet. Leave us a comment. Speaking of comments, below, let us know what you think of this tier list. Please feel free to take the ships that we've mentioned and put them in a different tier list, because I can guarantee you the other Inforunners are going to be linking those to me in less than a few hours, because that's what they do. Because not everyone.
The video was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. This is what you did wrong. Because I guarantee you'd ask any Inforunner, and this list would be somewhat different. And I'm sure, but it just. I think most of the Inforunners would probably, and that's kind of why I said top to medium. The ones in the top to medium, I think you'd find most of the Inforunners agreed that they belong in top to medium.
If you ask 3 Inforunners a question, you'll get 6 different answers.
That's so true. All right. He's been Osiris. I've been Execute, and I think we'll catch you in the next one. Oh, don't forget to like, subscribe, Patreon, all
Like,
that
subscribe.
fancy stuff that we
See you
don't
guys
really
later.
care much about. Have a good one.